Alrighty guys, today we're once again talking about PSA's grading guarantee because it still seems people are confused with what actually applies. People are still confused about the fact that the grading guarantee does not apply to you as the submitter. Yes, I've talked about these to death over the last 3 to 4 years, in particular the last 2 because it's gotten worse, they've changed the terminology. But I want to talk about it again because people are still very much confused, none more so than Mike Geo himself. There was a Professor Sports Card live stream the other day where Mike essentially said some of the information out there was misinterpreted or misreported. We're going to play the clip in a second, and then we're going to take you straight to PSA's grading guarantee and read it together because I'm shocked that people in this day and age still can't interpret what is black and white within their own policy. People like Jeff Wilson doesn't know this applies. It's bloody ridiculous that people don't read this and don't know that you're not protected. So I want to talk about it today, like I said, to educate others and sort of get the discussion going down in the comments below as always. Now, the live stream that I'm referring to is this one over here. And you can see I've done a bit of a control find to find exactly which timestamp this was talked about. Ziggy had brought it up, and you guys have probably seen this live stream by now because Mike Geo went on a ridiculous rant about Ziggy and said some really inappropriate things, but we'll save that for a future video. But this is it over here. I'm going to play it for you, and I'm going to share my thoughts in a sec.
Altered cards, that warranty doesn't protect me.
A lot of people didn't know, though. Dan, the card man, is nice enough to.
Well, just to be clear, and we'll talk about that on the podcast, because again, you four may not like this. That was not entirely accurately reported either. I think some of that language was misinterpreted. So I'm going to get my facts straight, but they'll be on to talk about it specifically.
Clarify this. That my understanding why it's there is so that I, as a subber, am not sitting there altering cards and submitting them and then trying to get cash in on the policy. I thought it was to protect that. But maybe I'm wrong, and I look forward to hearing about it.
Let me be absolutely clear before. That's how I haven't said a word, because I heard it the first time. I had not heard it, and I thought, I don't think this is accurate, but I don't want to come on and just say inaccurate crap just to refute stupidity. And maybe they were right, so I'm not going to, but I don't believe that was entirely correct.
Oh, look forward to that.
So Mike doesn't believe that it's totally correct, and he's going to have PSA on to talk about it, which I think is fantastic. I've been trying to get PSA to go on the record with clarifications on this. People like Allin35 have on Twitter as well. We've talked about it many, many times. But we're going to go straight to the grading guarantee now because it's pretty black and white in that it does not apply to the submitter. Now, just very quickly, Ziggy was correct with his assessment there around it not applying to the submitter because PSA don't want people to knowingly submit fake or altered cards, right? They don't want people to go ahead and do some dodgy things, print some fake cards, send it off to PSA grade it, and then it turns out it's fake because you clearly knew it was fake, you manipulated them, and you've now sent them millions of dollars worth of cards they now need to pay out on. Obviously, that's why they don't extend it to the submitter, but we'll talk about their T's and C's right here, right now. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit to make it a little bit bigger. And we're going to read through this because, you know, people apparently can't read for themselves. I'm going to take you through it now, so apologies if it's a little bit boring. Now, this section, I just Googled PSA's grading guarantee. It's this at the website psacard.com/financial guarantee. And what it does say is the terms and conditions of the PSA authenticity and grade guarantee. The PSA authenticity and grade guarantee is fundamental to PSA's reputation as the leading third-party authenticator and grading service. Subject to the limited exceptions detailed below, this grading guarantee is PSA's assurance that we stand behind our opinions as to the authenticity and or grade of each item that we encapsulate as reflected on each PSA label. The terms and conditions detailed below govern the guarantee. PSA reserves the right to modify or update the grading guarantee at any time, which they have multiple times in the last 12 to 18 months. You would have seen me talk about this in many videos. Any claimant under the guarantee must sign an attestation agreement and may be subject to a background check to confirm eligibility. As we've also seen in the past, they require people to sign NDAs as well. Now, they break this up to 2 different guarantees. There's one specifically for cards, and then there's obviously one now for comics and magazines. We only care about the cards in this particular instance. So the cards authenticity and grade guarantee, PSA guarantees that all cards submitted shall be graded in accordance with PSA's authentication and grading standards. For the avoidance of doubt, the guarantee does not cover any cards graded by any other companies and exclusive to PSA's graded cards only, regardless of whether PSA owns any other grading company that operates under a separate name. So fundamentally, this is just legal mumbo jumbo to say, hey, it's only cards in a PSA slab that are going to be covered. Now, the next section over here talks about upon presentation to PSA by the current owner of a PSA authenticated and graded card, if PSA concludes that the card was erroneously awarded the PSA grade assigned or fails PSA's authenticity standards, and provided the card had an active certification number on the cert lookup feature of the PSA website at the time it was purchased by the person submitting the grading guarantee request. Then, subject to the maximum amount, PSA in its sole discretion will provide one of the two remedies named under grading remedies down below. I'll get to that in a second. So essentially what this is saying is if the card's graded a 10 and you bought it and then you realize the card was damaged or it was misgraded or it was fake and you send it to PSA and they agree with you, they're going to pay out. And that means, it was a 10, but it should have been an 8 or 5 or 6 or whatever. They're going to pay out. If it turns out later that it was altered or trimmed, they're going to pay out. That's essentially what this is saying. Now, the grading remedies or the guarantee remedies are listed below. In response to an eligible valid guarantee claim, PSA will either, in general, buy the applicable card, magazine, or comic outright from the current owner at its current market value, had the earliest had the earlier assigned grade or finding of authenticity as applicable and accurate. I don't know what that means right now, but essentially what they're saying here is they're going to buy it from the owner at the current market value. And then for certain cards only, solely in the event that PSA assigns an authentic card a lower grade or deems it ineligible for a grade, refund the difference between its value at the error PSA grade and its value at the revised PSA grade. In such case, the card will also be returned to the customer along with a refund for the difference. So either they're going to take the card back and pay out in full, or they're going to pay you the difference, i.e. you paid 100 grand because you wanted a PSA 10. It's now actually a PSA 5. They're only worth 10 grand. They're going to pay you 90 grand back. Now, this is where things get a bit interesting, and this is where things have changed recently. But essentially, they have some more terminology here and requirements about how much they can actually pay out towards you in a specific lifetime. So the current market value is determined by PSA in its sole and absolute discretion, which is a bit bullshit, to be honest, based in part on the PSA price guide values and verifiable recent prices realized. A proof of purchase must be provided as part of the valuation process. In each case of a guaranteed claim, for cards, there is a per card cap of 250 grand, meaning the maximum they can pay out is 250 grand. For comics and magazines, there is a per comic or magazine cap of 50 grand. And then also a lifetime cap of $500,000 per customer across all items, which goes back to what I said in my last video. If you've got a big collection, like somebody with tens of millions of dollars bought, and they're all in PSA slabs, and you think you're getting protection because they're in PSA slabs, the max you can ever get paid back by PSA is $500,000, which is insane. Like, it's insane to me how people are not factoring this into their buying, because when you're going ahead and grading with a company that's there to give you authenticity guarantees and you're meant to trust them, they're only going to pay out 500 grand max. That's not good enough in my opinion, but that's a conversation for another day. PSA will not pay guarantee claims in excess of the maximum amount as may be applicable based on the circumstances. Let me read that again because my brain is cooked. PSA will not pay guarantee claims in excess of the maximum amount as may be applicable based on the circumstances. So basically, if a card is worth more, they're not going to pay out more. As used for the purposes of this guarantee, person means any individual or entity of any type. In counting claim amounts paid or pending towards a person's lifetime cap, PSA may, in its discretion, in order to prevent abuse, include the claims of related persons, including but not limited to related members of the same household and entities, directors and officers and affiliated businesses. So essentially what they're saying is, if you're a group submitter, if you are a company, if you are a breaking company, all the people that are working for you, they're going to consolidate that into one single amount, which, makes things even worse, especially if you're somebody that consistently goes with submitters. Now, where things get very interesting and where the challenges come from someone like Mike in the last video is the exceptions with the grading guarantee. Because what I said in the previous video that Mike called out here is potentially being inaccurate or being misinterpreted is the fact that the grading guarantee does not apply to the person who submitted the card in the first place. And what it does say over here, these are the exceptions to the grading guarantee, and these guarantees do not apply to any people in the following circumstances. The guarantee does not apply to and cannot be utilized by the original submitter. There, pretty black and white. I don't know what was misinterpreted there, Mike. I'm shocked that people can't comprehend this for themselves or have the reading legibility to sort of get through this. But it says here, it does not apply to you if you are the person submitting it or anyone acting on behalf of or for the benefit of the original submitter of the item. So maybe the group submitter in that case too. If you've gone through a group submitter, this still does not apply to you. PSA reserves the right to investigate the relationship between the person making the guarantee request and the original submitter, including by way of performing a background check. The grading guarantee does not differentiate between the authentic and authentic altered designations due to the fact that PSA does not always print the term altered on the label itself for technical reasons. Now, this is where I've challenged them in the past, right? Because people will buy an authentic slab and not know that it can mean authentic altered. And if you're somebody that does that because the label simply says authentic, you're screwed in this particular instance because PSA in the back end are still considering those cards as authentic altered. So it does not apply to you in that particular instance. The guarantee does not apply to any grades assigned to any comic or magazines and solely applies to the comics or magazines' authenticity. So if they've misgraded a comic book, you are not protected in this instance. The guarantee does not apply to any item as to which a clerical error was made with respects to the assigned grade or description. Now, I think we've talked about this in the past. I believe when they're talking about clerical errors is when the card is in the slab and it obviously looks like it should have graded a PSA 4, but it says PSA 10 on the label. You're not going to get protected in that instance either. I think we spoke about this with a particular instance, I want to say 12 to 24 months ago, as always with this piece over here. The grading guarantee does not apply to any item as to which a clerical or mechanical error, i.e. a typo or a mislabel, has been made with respects to the item's specification, set, variation, or parallel. So if you bought a card because it said it was an XYZ parallel, but it turns out it was just a base card, you're not protected in that instance either because they're saying you should know better and not be trusting their labels. Apologies for my kids going bananas in the background. The guarantee does not apply to any item that has been removed from the PSA holder, either inadvertently or intentionally. The guarantee does not apply to any item for which the PSA holder or labels show evidence of tampering or fraud. That makes sense. The guarantee does not apply to any item for which there is evidence of rough handling, such as shaking or slamming, which can cause a discernible pattern of damage to the cards. The grading guarantee does not apply to any item that has been environmentally damaged due to improper storage or natural disasters such as fire and water damage or environmental deterioration. The grading guarantee does not apply to manufacturer defects, including misprints, which is silly because they should have factored that into their grade, in my opinion. The grading guarantee does not apply to the authenticity or grade assigned to any autograph, whether certified by a manufacturer or applied after its release. The grading guarantee does not apply to the authenticity of grade or grades, assigned to cards with memorabilia pieces, including but not limited to jersey swatches, logo patches, game used bat relics, etc. So essentially saying if you've got a relic patch auto, as an example, you're not protected at all. Does not apply to, cards or sketch cards or comic magazine art within them. Does not apply to any unopened material such as packs and boxes. So you're not protected if you've got a pack graded by PSA. Does not apply to tickets, which is even more insane. Does not apply to any game used memorabilia that they have authenticated either. Does not apply to individual photographs. It does not apply to any physical media, including without limitation, video games, music, recordings, television shows, or movies. It does not apply where the certification number has been deactivated by PSA before the most recent purchase of the item. Does not apply to lost, stolen, or damaged item. It solely applies to items questions regarding an item's authenticity or solely in the case of cards their assigned grade. And finally, does not apply to Funko Pops. So a lot of words there. Apologies for mumbling through and rambling through. Apologies for my kids, going bananas. But this is pretty black and white. It does not apply to you as the submitter, which, I'm shocked that was basically said to have been misreported or misinterpreted. Now, Mike obviously hasn't looked into the detail himself. He's waiting for PSA to say it for themselves. But fundamentally, if PSA is something otherwise, I'm really curious as to what that actually means, because this is bloody black and white. They have a 250 grand cap per item. They have a $500,000 cap per individual or business, and it does not apply to the original submitter. It does not apply to patch cards. It does not apply to tickets. It does not apply to Type 1 photos, and it doesn't apply to autographs. So really, it's pretty crystal clear that the grading guarantee does not apply to you. And when you're somebody that's got a big collection that you've bought externally, you've not submitted yourself, you're only protected after that $500,000. So you need to be very conscious of your spending because you're not going to be covered here. And there's so much ignorance out there where people are clearly not aware of that being the case. It's just insane to me. And if you're somebody that's got a huge PC that you've sent to PSA because they're the best, they've got the best market value, you think they're the best at what they do, and you want some protection like I do for my PC, well, guess what? You're not protected at all. It's crazy to me how people don't know this. And obviously, like I said in the start, PSA are clearly doing this because they don't want people to sort of milk the system. They don't want people to game the system like Ziggy said earlier. They don't want people to sit there and make all these fake stickers, make all these fake cards, alter all these things, and then send them to PSA and then say, hey, PSA, you screwed, these are all fake. You need to give them my money back, right, at market value. Like PSA is going to say, no, you intentionally try to defraud us. But this is not, what it should be there to do. Like, obviously, there should be a rule there to protect against that particular instance. But if you're somebody that's bought a card at a local show and you can prove that, or you've bought it off eBay and you want to send it into PSA, this grading guarantee should protect you. And right now it doesn't. So PSA need to come out and give some context on this. So I'm really curious to see what they're going to talk about in this interview with Mike, because it's bloody black and white, right? It's nothing to be ambiguous here. They're basically telling you what does and doesn't apply. And submitters are not protected. Patch cards are not protected. You're only protected up to 250 grand per item and $500,000 as a lifetime cap. And obviously, this won't impact you or I as average everyday collectors, but this does, because a lot of us want to use our PC or use them for our PC because we want that protection, but you're not protected. So why are we using them in the first place? Why are they commanding so much value if they're not giving us anything in return, right? We trust them as a third-party grader. PSA in that first paragraph talk about the fact that they consider themselves to be the best, right? They consider wanting to protect their reputation, yet they're not going to stand by it when it comes to, mistakes that they go ahead and make. They need to distinguish between people that do this intentionally to try and game the system and your everyday collector wanting to sort of, protect their PC, right? You should still be protected in that instance because it's not fair that you or I get screwed over because of the scammers that are out there. So anyway, you guys can let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. Obviously, there's been exceptions in the past. We've seen stories where people have been protected as the submitter, right? Because they've been high profile, they've been able to talk to PSA, it's been a high profile situation, PSA have paid out. But that's not the norm. And the norm is what's impacting 99% of us, right? The hobby elite shouldn't be the ones that get to benefit from this. Like, that's ridiculous, right? There can't be a rule for some and not others. So let's see what Mike comes back with. Again, I don't know what was ambiguous about that. I don't know what was inaccurately reported about that. You guys can maybe let me know if I've read something wrong there. But, that was a pretty boring video of me reading through a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo that is pretty crystal clear, pretty black and white. I don't know what else to say about this. The grading guarantee does not apply to submitters. I don't know how many fucking times I need to say it, but it's that black and white. So anyway, guys, share your thoughts down below and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.